What if the one you're destined to love is the one you're fated to destroy? In the kingdom of Illyrian, those born without divine power are branded heretics, hunted, burned, erased. But one girl, desperate to survive, dares to trick the gods themselves. When her false prophecy saves the life of a dying prince, she's dragged from execution to exaltation, a fraud crowned as the kingdom's newest seer. Yet salvation has teeth. Her gift will be tested in the trials of glory, where nobles kill to prove divine favor. And watching her every move is the heir she saved, Prince Kael, a man raised to unmask pretenders, now drawn to the only woman who should not exist. If you're ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, hit subscribe and let the story begin. The square of executions reeked of old smoke and fresh fear. Chains clinked as the condemned knelt beneath the altar of judgment, and among them, Ilara kept her eyes down, her lips trembling with the prayers she didn't believe. The Inquisitor's blade gleamed like a sunrise over steel, catching the blood-red banners that fluttered above the crowd. "Another without blessing," the priest announced, his voice like thunder rolling across the stone. "The gods have turned their faces from you." The crowd chanted for fire. Ilara wanted to scream. She wanted to live. But as the bells began to toll for the sacrifice, something shifted. A whisper cutting through the noise, not from the crowd, not from the priests, but from inside her. "Speak," the voice said, "or die forgotten." Her lips moved before her mind could stop them. "The heir to the throne will die before the sun sets." The world froze. Gasps rippled through the mob like a wave breaking against rock. The Inquisitor froze mid-swing. "What did you say?" he hissed, leaning close enough for her to smell the iron on his breath. Ilara's heart slammed against her ribs. She had no plan, only terror and instinct. "The gods spoke through me," she said, and her voice didn't tremble. "They have shown me blood." Moments later, shouts echoed from the palace. The prince had been attacked during training. He lived, barely. The crowd's fury turned to awe. "A prophet," someone whispered. "The gods chose her." The execution halted, replaced by reverence. Chains fell from her wrists. The Inquisitor bowed, but his eyes burned with something darker than faith. As the guards escorted her away, the world spun in colors too bright, too unreal. "I did it," she thought. "I lied to live." But above the roar of the crowd, she swore she heard that same whisper again. Softer now, colder. "The gods do not forgive thieves of their voice." That night, as torches lit the road to the palace, she looked back once, at the smoke rising from the square where others burned. Her freedom felt heavy, like borrowed fire waiting to consume her. The palace loomed like a cathedral built to honor vanity. Marble floors gleamed with reflected candlelight, and every noble's smile was a blade hidden behind silk. Ilara walked through corridors lined with statues of old saints, each one watching her as if they knew her secret. Her simple robes had been replaced by shimmering gold, her wrists bound not by chains now, but by expectation. The Prophet of the Crimson Hour, they called her, a name carved from her own lie. At the end of the throne room sat the king, his crown heavy with rubies and resentment. "If the gods truly favor you," he said, "you will prove it in the trials of glory." His words were cold, deliberate. Around her, courtiers murmured prayers that sounded more like curses. And beside him, leaning lazily against the steps, was Prince Kael, the man her prophecy had saved. He was nothing like she'd imagined. Sharp, composed, eyes the color of storms over iron. When he looked at her, she felt the truth of what everyone whispered, that Kael was the king's sword made flesh. "So this is the girl who speaks for the gods," he said softly. "Strange, she looks mortal to me." The hall chuckled. Ilara's jaw tightened, her pulse a drum in her throat. "Perhaps the gods prefer humility," she replied. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then they've made a poor choice." The trials were announced that evening, challenges meant to reveal divine favor through blood and pain. The first would begin at dawn. In her chambers, Ilara stared at the moonlight tracing the floor and whispered, "How long can I keep lying before the truth kills me?" Her reflection didn't answer, only shimmered faintly in the bronze mirror like something not quite human. Later that night, Kale appeared outside her door without armor or crown. Just silence. "If you're false," he said, voice low, "you won't survive the first trial." She met his gaze. "Then I'll have to make the gods believe in me." His smirk was almost sorrowful. "They don't believe in anyone." When he left, she stood alone, hand pressed to her chest where the whisper still lingered, that voice in her blood that might not be her own. "You will burn for the truth," it murmured. And for the first time, Alara wondered if she already had. The arena smelled of sweat and sacrifice. Sunlight poured through the open ceiling, burning against the sand where blood had dried in ancient stains. Nobles crowded the marble balconies, their jeweled hands clutching cups of wine, eager to see the prophet bleed. Alara stood at the center, trembling inside the ceremonial armor they'd forced upon her. The iron collar bit into her neck as if mocking the freedom she'd stolen. The herald's voice cut through the noise. "Show us your gift, child of the gods." Behind the gates, chains rattled. Then came the growl, deep, guttural, monstrous. A creature burst forth, half lion, half serpent, its scales glinting like molten obsidian. Its eyes burned gold as it circled her, the sound of claws scraping the sand louder than her heartbeat. Alara's breath came short, her mind screaming for a vision that refused to come. See, predict, survive. Nothing, just silence and terror. High above, Kale leaned forward on the balcony, his gaze sharp enough to cut through her panic. He had commanded this test himself, a punishment, a warning, a test of her truth. "Let's see what the gods whisper," he said quietly, his voice lost beneath the crowd's roar. Alara gritted her teeth, searching, thinking. The beast lunged, and then she saw it. A glimmer of light on its right claw, the faint hitch in its movement. It was blind on one side. She dove left just as it struck. Sand exploded where she'd stood a heartbeat ago. The crowd gasped as she rolled to her feet, grabbed a fallen spear, and turned the creature's blindness into its weakness. She didn't need prophecy. She had observation, instinct, desperation. When the creature fell, her hands shook, not from glory, but from the lie that had just saved her again. Kale's expression was unreadable. Pride? Suspicion? He rose, descending the stairs as the arena fell silent. The nobles bowed as he approached her, their whispers heavy with awe. "A miracle," they said. Kale stopped before her, eyes cold. "That wasn't divine," he murmured, close enough that only she heard. "It was survival." Alara forced a smile. Perhaps that's the same thing. That night, she dreamed of the beast again. Only this time, it had Kale's face. "You can't lie forever," it said in his voice, coiling around her throat. She woke gasping, the whisper in her blood repeating the same words until dawn. Gold light streamed through the high windows of the palace hall, catching the glitter of chandeliers and the shimmer of silks. The court had transformed the aftermath of death into a feast of triumph, celebrating her vision. Alara sat among nobles whose laughter was sharp as daggers. Perfumed air, poisoned words. Every breath felt like walking through smoke. She kept her head bowed, pretending humility while her mind calculated every gaze, every whisper. The queen smiled from her throne, but her eyes carried frost. A man approached her, tall, robed in crimson, his hair silvered at the temples. "Lord Theron," he introduced himself, bowing with elegant disdain. "You remind me of someone. A boy I once trained with before he vanished for lacking the gods' favor." Her pulse faltered. Her brother, the name she hadn't dared speak since childhood. "You knew him?" she asked quietly. His smile was thin. "I remember him." Before she could press further, Kale's shadow fell across the table. "Careful, Prophet," Kale said, his tone half warning, half threat. Theron is known for his love of games. The tension between the two men was palpable. Old rivalry. Old secrets. Ilara's hands clenched in her lap, her mind spinning. If Theron knows about my brother, he could destroy me. Later, Kyle cornered her in a deserted corridor, his expression unreadable in the flickering torchlight. "What did he tell you?" She lifted her chin. "Enough to make me wonder what you're hiding." He stepped closer until the air between them trembled. "You think you're clever," he said softly. "You're not. Every lie leaves a shadow." Alara swallowed. "Then perhaps you should stop standing in mine." For a moment, Something cracked in his mask. Anger, amusement, something deeper she couldn't name. He turned away, muttering, "You'll regret that courage." That night, in her chamber, she found a sealed note under her pillow. "Your brother lives, but not as you remember." The handwriting was elegant, familiar, and unsigned. Her chest tightened as the whisper returned, coiling behind her ribs like smoke. "Blood calls to blood," it murmured, "but some names are better buried." Outside, Cale watched her window from the courtyard below, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. "You're not what you pretend to be," he whispered to the dark. "But God's help me. Neither am I." Dawn bled across the palace like spilled wine. The trial's second stage was set within the Hall of Divination, a place of mirrors and murmuring flames. Each contestant was to gaze into the sacred pool and speak the future of a chosen noble. Ilara's heart froze when she learned whose fate she must reveal. Prince Cale himself. Around them, the court gathered in tense anticipation, eager for her downfall. "Show us the god's truth," the king commanded. She knelt before the pool. The water reflected her face, then rippled as if stirred by unseen breath. No vision came, only darkness. "Please," she thought, "anything." Then suddenly the water flashed crimson. She saw Cale kneeling in the dust, sword shattered, blood pouring from his chest. He reached for her, and she heard herself whisper, "I'm sorry," before driving the blade into his heart. The image vanished. The nobles waited. Ilara's throat constricted. She could not tell them the truth. She could barely breathe it. "The gods show only fire," she lied, voice trembling. "Fire and victory." The court erupted in relief. Cale's eyes stayed fixed on hers, sharp and searching. Later, when the hall emptied, he found her alone. "What did you really see?" he asked, his voice quiet but dangerous. "Nothing worth remembering," she whispered. "You're lying." "Always," she said. He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, unintentional or not. She couldn't tell. "You should be afraid of me," he murmured. "I am," she confessed, her voice breaking. "That's the problem." For a heartbeat, silence stretched, fragile and infinite. Then he turned away, muttering, "Fear is the truest faith." That night, the vision returned. She stood again over Cale's dying body, blood warm on her hands, his eyes wide with something like forgiveness. The whisper in her mind pulsed louder than her heartbeat. "You cannot escape what you create." She woke screaming, the taste of iron on her tongue. In the silence that followed, she realized she'd bitten her own lip, and her blood glowed faintly in the dark. Ilara touched the glowing drop, horror rising with understanding. "No," she breathed. "Not me." But the whisper answered, gentle and cruel. "Yes, little prophet. The gods are no longer silent. They are inside you." Rain lashed the palace walls like a punishment from heaven. The trials had paused for mourning. A noble's death, an accident, they whispered. But Ilara sensed the truth beneath it. The gods had grown restless. She wandered into the lower halls where the air smelled of damp stone and secrets. There, hidden behind iron doors, she found the pit of champions, where failed contestants were turned into gladiators for the court's amusement. Screams echoed from below. One voice stopped her heart. "Please," she whispered through the bars, gripping the rusted iron until her fingers bled. The man chained to the wall lifted his head, a face carved from memory and ruin. Her brother. Older now, scarred, eyes hollow. "Ilara." His voice cracked like a prayer. Tears blurred her vision as she fell to her knees. "I thought you were dead." He smiled bitterly. "I was. The gods just forgot to bury me." Before she could reach him, guards arrived, dragging him away for training. Her protests met steel and silence. She begged Kyle to intervene, but his jaw tightened with conflict. "Those chosen for the trials of blood are already dead," he said. "You can't save him." Her rage burned hot enough to shake the walls. "You of all people should know what it's like to live under someone else's mercy." Kyle looked at her, something raw flickering beneath the frost of his expression. "Don't compare me to you," he said. "You built your power from lies." She stepped closer, eyes wet and defiant. "And you built yours from obedience. Which of us is freer?" The silence that followed cut deeper than any blade. That night, she dreamed of her brother again, but he wasn't chained. He stood in the center of a burning field, eyes glowing gold. "The gods made you their mouth," he said. but they made me their weapon. When she woke, her window was open, and a faint trail of ash led out into the storm. Ilara pressed a trembling hand to her chest, the whisper inside her louder than before. "Blood calls to blood," it murmured again, almost tender, "and blood always finds its way home." By morning, word spread that the next trial would be one of illusion, a contest of divine perception, where seers were to reveal falsehoods woven by sorcery. The arena shimmered like liquid glass as contestants stepped into its mirrored haze. Ilara's reflection fractured into 1,000 selves, each one whispering a different lie. "You don't belong here," one sneered. "You killed him," hissed another. "You'll kill him again." Her pulse pounded as visions twisted around her. Each illusion was a memory turned cruel. The fire from her childhood, her brother's screams, Kyle's unreadable eyes. Then came the final mirage, Kyle himself, standing before her, his blade dripping red. "What are you hiding, Prophet?" he asked, his voice too real. She backed away, her breath shallow. "It's not him," she told herself. "It's not real." But when she blinked, the illusion changed. Kyle knelt, wounded, his blood spilling into the sand. "Ilara," he gasped, reaching for her. Her heart cracked open, her hand extending instinctively. The moment her skin touched the vision's blood, the mirrors shattered. Reality collapsed into silence. The spectators stared, awed and afraid. She had broken a spell meant to test the gods themselves. Kyle approached her afterward, his eyes dark with something between fear and fascination. "That wasn't illusion," he said quietly. "What did you see?" She could barely speak. "Your death, then we share the same prophecy," he murmured. "Because every time I look at you, I see mine too." That night, her dreams burned with symbols she didn't understand. Wings of ash, rivers of flame, a voice whispering from within her bones. "You are the god's echo," it said, "and echoes never fade. They devour." She woke trembling, a faint golden glow pulsing beneath her skin. Kale found her in the dawn, standing barefoot on the balcony. "You look like someone waiting for the end," he said softly. She turned toward him, her voice barely more than breath. "Maybe it's already begun." Days blurred into ritual and rumor. The priests began to speak her name with reverence, yet fear followed her like a shadow. The king summoned her to the sanctum, a chamber carved beneath the palace, filled with bones of forgotten saints. "The gods favor you," he said, "but favor comes with price." He placed a hand over the stone altar, where ancient symbols pulsed faintly. "Tell me what the sleeping god dreams of." When her fingers touched the altar, cold fire raced through her veins. Images flashed, cities falling, rivers of light. Kale's face twisted in agony, and beneath it all, a voice older than time. "I do not sleep. I wait." She recoiled, gasping. The king's eyes gleamed. "So it speaks to you." "It's not a god," she whispered. "It's something else." His smile was thin. "Call it what you wish. It has chosen you." Kale was there when she stumbled out of the sanctum, her skin pale as ash. "What did they make you touch?" he demanded. "Something that remembers," she breathed. He took her shoulders, his grip firm, his voice breaking. "They're using you. Whatever power this is, it's not divine. It's consuming you." She met his eyes, her pulse a storm beneath fragile skin. "Then why can't I stop?" For the first time, Kale didn't answer. He simply pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Because power is just another kind of hunger," he said, voice hoarse, "and I've spent my life starving." That night, the whisper returned, not in her mind, but in her reflection. The god's voice spoke through her mirror self. "He will betray you," it said. "He was born to kill false prophets." She struck the mirror until it shattered, but her reflection kept smiling. When dawn came, Kyle was gone, summoned by the king for orders she was not meant to hear. The mirror shards on her floor still whispered, faintly glowing with her heartbeat. The palace glimmered under chandeliers, masks, and lies. A banquet was held to honor the prophet's triumphs, though every toast felt like a threat. Nobles laughed too loudly, their eyes darting between Ilara and Kale. Predator and prey caught in the same snare. Music filled the hall, but beneath it pulsed a note of dread. She could sense poison in the air, betrayal under every word. Kale approached her under the guise of dance, his hand cold around hers. "Don't drink the wine," he murmured. "Half this room wants to see which god bleeds from your throat." She met his gaze with a half smile. "And the other half wants to see what I'll do when they try." Their steps matched in dangerous rhythm, every turn of the waltz a duel of secrets. Midway through the feast, a scream cut the music. A noble collapsed, blood foaming at his lips. Panic erupted, silver goblets crashing to the floor. Guards stormed in, and Kale's blade was drawn before thought. The king's gaze found Alara immediately. "Your prophecy?" he demanded. Her lips trembled. "The gods were silent tonight. Then perhaps they've abandoned you." Chaos deepened. In the confusion, Lord Theron slipped from the room, his cloak brushing her arm as he passed. A folded note appeared in her palm. "Your brother fights tomorrow. One of you will die." She turned to Kyle, but he was already at the king's side, whispering orders. The distance between them felt unbearable. Later, he found her on the balcony, moonlight spilling across his armor. "You can't save him," Kyle said quietly. "The trials demand blood." Her voice cracked. "Then take mine instead." His expression softened. "A moment of mercy, fleeting and fragile. Don't offer what you can't survive losing." And when he left, she looked down at the gardens below, where the poisoned noble's body had been left for the crows. The whisper curled in her ear once more, colder than ever. "Every feast ends in hunger. Every lie ends in blood. Yours will be the sweetest." Thunder rolled across the sky like drums of war. The arena had changed, no longer grand and gilded, but stripped to stone and shadow. 2 names were called for the final duel: Alara of the Prophecy and the Masked Champion. Her heart stilled. She knew that name. Her brother stepped into the light, chains coiling his wrists, eyes blank with divine possession. The gods had turned him into a weapon. "Begin," the king commanded. Alara dropped her blade. "I won't fight you." Her brother's voice was hollow, inhuman. "Then you'll die." Steel flashed. She barely parried the first strike, tears blurring her sight. "It's me," she pleaded. "Please remember." But the gods had erased his mercy. Each blow came heavier, faster, divine fury channeled through mortal flesh. Kale watched from the stands, torn between duty and despair. The crowd chanted for blood. Alara stumbled, bleeding, her knees sinking into the dust. "Forgive me," she whispered, not to the gods, but to the brother who'd once promised to protect her. In a desperate act, she reached inward, toward the whisper she'd fought for weeks. "Help me," she begged. Just this once. The air split open. Golden fire erupted from her chest, engulfing her brother in a halo of light. The gods screamed through him as the possession shattered. He fell, free but dying, his eyes clearing long enough to see her face. "Alara," he breathed. "You found your gift." "I never wanted it," she sobbed. "Then make it mean something." He died in her arms, the crowd silent in awe and horror. Kyle descended into the arena, his expression unreadable. "They'll call you a god now," he said quietly. "They'll fear you." She looked up, eyes glowing faintly with divine gold. "Then let them." As the king rose to proclaim her divinity, Kale's hand brushed the hilt of his sword. The whisper in her blood purred. "Here ends the false prophet, or begins the god." She met Kale's gaze and saw the truth reflected there. Love and ruin, bound by the same hand. The arena still smoldered when dawn broke. Smoke curled through the corridors, mingling with the scent of incense and fear. Alara was locked in the upper chambers of the temple, watched by priests who bowed too deeply, their reverence tainted with terror. Outside, the people chanted her name, calling her Oracle of Flame, Daughter of the Sleeping God. Every title felt like another chain. She gazed down from the marble balcony at the fires spreading through the city. Her brother's death had sparked something. Rebellion, maybe. Faith turned wild and hungry. Kyle was the only one who dared enter her chamber. His armor was unpolished, his face drawn with sleepless guilt. "The king wants to parade you at the coronation tonight," he said, voice low. "He'll use your miracle to sanctify his rule." Alara turned from the window, her voice rough. "He'll use me the way the gods used my brother." Kale flinched, jaw tightening. "You shouldn't compare him to them." "Why not?" she whispered. "He kills for power. So do they." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was filled with everything they could not admit. He stepped closer, removing his gloves, his hands trembling as they reached for her. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." She met his eyes, storm meeting flame. "Then stay," she said. "Even if it kills us both." His fingers brushed her cheek, a single act of defiance. "It already has," he murmured. Outside, thunder cracked across the heavens, though the skies were clear. Alara felt the pulse of divine energy deep beneath the palace, a heartbeat in the bones of the earth. "Something's waking," she said. "Not the gods. Something older." Kyle drew his sword halfway, as if against instinct. Then maybe that's what the gods fear. When the bells tolled for evening, the priests came for her. They dressed her in gold and ash, a crown of obsidian pressed onto her brow until blood welled beneath it. As they led her toward the great hall, she whispered a silent promise to her brother's ghost. "I'll end this, even if it means ending me." The throne room glittered like a false heaven. Golden banners rippled beneath torchlight. Choirs sang hymns older than truth. The king sat on his obsidian throne, a living monument to arrogance. Kyle stood beside him, his face carved into duty, though his eyes searched the crowd for her. When Alara entered, the hall fell silent. Every noble bowed. Every priest knelt. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. She walked past the kneeling masses, her footsteps echoing like distant thunder. The crown burned on her skull, whispering in 1,000 voices. "Kneel to none. Rise as all." She stopped at the base of the dais. "Your oracle, your majesty," the high priest intoned. The king rose, smiling with the cold benevolence of a viper. "The gods bless my reign through you," he said, "and tonight the world shall witness it." Alara lifted her gaze to him, calm and steady. "Do they bless you?" she asked softly. "Or have they simply grown tired of waiting for your fall?" A murmur rippled through the court. The king's smile faltered. "Mind your tongue, prophet. It's not my tongue you should fear," she said. And the torches flared white-hot, their flames bending toward her like living things. Kale's hand drifted toward his blade. The whisper in her blood sang louder. "He was meant to end you. Let him try." The king shouted, "Seize her!" But the guards hesitated, eyes wide with dread. "You would raise swords against your god?" Alara's voice echoed, layered, her own, and something divine beneath it. Every torch in the hall burst, raining fire and ash. Kale lunged, not at her, but at the king. In one motion, he severed the crown from the tyrant's head. Gasps filled the chamber. "Run!" he hissed to Alara, but the floor trembled violently, cracking open beneath the throne. From the depths rose a light, not holy, but vast and hungry. "You've woken it," she breathed. Kyle turned, eyes wide. "No," he said. "You have." The palace crumbled around them as the sleeping god rose. Its voice was not sound, but sensation, pressure, gravity, heat. "You wear my name," it said, "and yet you do not kneel." Its form was endless, shifting through shadow and gold, a memory given flesh. The king's body burned to ash at its touch. Priests screamed prayers that dissolved into dust. Alara fell to her knees, her skin glowing like molten glass. "I didn't call you," she gasped. "You used me." The god laughed, a sound that split the air. "All vessels think they are thieves of divinity. You are no different." But Kale stepped between them, sword raised though he was shaking. "Then you've never met her," he said. "She doesn't serve, she survives." The god's attention turned to him, amused. "A mortal shield. How quaint." "Don't," Alara begged, gripping his arm. "You can't fight something that was never born." Kyle met her gaze. Steady, heartbreaking. "Maybe not, but I can remind it what it means to die." Before she could stop him, he drove his blade into the radiant core of the being. For an instant, light consumed everything. The god screamed, a sound of worlds ending. Kyle was thrown back, his body burning, the sword melting in his hands. Alara crawled to him, the god's voice echoing in her mind. "He is mine now, as are you." Rage surged through her, pure and terrible. "No," she whispered. "Not anymore." She reached into the light, her hand dissolving into gold, and pulled the god's essence into herself. The world convulsed. Stone shattered, the heavens split, and then silence. When the dust cleared, she stood alone. The god was gone. The sky bled dawn. Kyle lay unmoving at her feet, and for the first time, the whisper in her blood was silent. The battlefield that had once been a palace was quiet. Smoke drifted over broken statues and fallen banners. Elara knelt beside Kale, her trembling hands hovering over his chest. His heartbeat was faint, fragile as a dying star. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please." His lips moved weakly. "You stopped the gods." She shook her head. "No, I became one." Power coursed through her veins, too vast to contain. She could feel the earth breathing beneath her, the sea's pulse miles away. Every voice, every prayer, every sin whispered her name. It was intoxicating. It was horrifying. Kale's fingers found hers, grounding her to the mortal world. "Don't lose yourself to it," he said, barely audible. "Promise me." She looked at him, the man sent to kill her, the man who had saved her soul instead. "If I let it go," she whispered, "I'll die." His smile was faint, tender. "Then you'll finally be free." Tears streaked her ash-stained cheeks. "I don't know how to be mortal anymore." "Then let me remind you," he murmured, and kissed her. A fragile, defiant thing that broke every law heaven had written. The divine fire within her flared, threatening to consume them both. She pulled away, crying out, "Kale, I can't hold it." He gripped her face between his hands. "Then don't. Let it burn through you, not against you." She closed her eyes and released the power. It poured from her in waves. Light, sound, memory. The god screamed as it was torn apart, scattered to the winds. When the light faded, Kale collapsed into her arms. His chest was still. The silence afterward was unbearable. "No," she whispered. "Not after everything." She pressed her forehead to his, sobbing. "You said I'd survive this. So wake up. Please, wake up." Days later, the city rebuilt itself around whispers. The king was gone, the priests scattered. In the temple where gods once ruled, now stood a single statue, not of divinity, but of two mortals entwined in eternal defiance. The people called it the false oracle and her knight. Some prayed to it, others feared it. None knew that the woman they worshipped still walked among them, veiled, silent, mortal again. Elara wandered through the ruins one last time. The world was quieter now, stripped of divine noise. She felt the sun on her skin and marveled at its simplicity. A child ran past her, dropping a small carved figurine, a soldier and a flame. She picked it up, smiling faintly. "You're still here," she whispered to the wind. "In the stories they tell." At the edge of the city, she looked back. The temple shimmered in the distance, its spire broken, but still catching light. "Maybe that's what faith is," she said softly. "Not worship, memory." The voice inside her, once a scream of gods, now murmured like a heartbeat. Not divine, not cursed, just human. She scattered the last of her crown's ashes into the river, watching them dissolve like dying stars. "For him," she said, "for all of us who pretended to be something more." The water carried them away, leaving her lighter than she had ever felt. And as the horizon bled gold, she whispered the words that would echo through legend. "What if the one you're destined to love is the one you're fated to destroy?" Then she walked into the sunrise. Not a prophet, not a god, but the last echo of a story too human to die.